Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, it's one of those things. So, Mr. Raleigh here. I want to share the first set of notes that we're going to do. Please make sure that if you haven't already, watch the video where I give you the instructions on note taking. Okay, that's very important because if you don't follow the instructions, you're not going to take the notes properly. So make sure when you do take the notes for this slideshow that you either take a picture of it or send me the file and share it with me. Okay? So here we go. We're going to dive into the content now with US history. First, we have to start with the first Americans. That would be the natives who have been here for quite a long time. Okay, so the first Americans from about 30,000 BCE to about 1491 CE, so right before Columbus arrived. So first we need to talk about some vocab you need to know. So I want you to make sure that you familiar yourself with what domesticated means, what irrigation means, what dwellings mean. So you can pause the video and write these things down on a piece of paper, preferably a notebook. So if you have a spiral notebook, which I told everybody to get, you can start taking these kinds of notes where you're just writing the vocabulary word, you're writing the vocab word itself, describe it, and put in the sentence that we provided to you here. Please make sure what ancestral means, what alliance means, pueblos mean, and oral tradition. Okay, so that's all very important things. So make sure you're writing your vocabulary. You can just write them out in normal notes, just straight out. But from this point on, you're going to be using the note-taking strategy that I gave you in the other video. So please make sure if you haven't seen that yet, you go and look at it now. Arrival and dispersal. So the earliest Americans crossed a land bridge between Siberia and Alaska between 15,000 and 30,000 years ago. Following large animals to hunt, these Asian migrants spread through North and South America, reaching the southern tip of South America by 9,000 BCE. This is quite a long time ago. Okay, 9,000 BCE is about 11,000 years ago. So this is a illustration. Obviously, there was clearly no visuals to go with this time period yet. So this is just a picture illustrating Asian immigrants crossing into North America. So there are 4 North American cultural regions that we are going to talk about for Native Americans. There are also subdivisions, and it can get kind of complicated, but we're going to keep it simple for now and make sure that you have the main 4. So please make sure you're referring to the video that I taught you how to take the notes for this section. You know, when you're instructed to sit here and watch the video, stay on this slide until you've written down all of the information for this slide so that you know exactly what you're doing, okay? So the 4 North American cultural regions, the first one we're going to talk about is the Pacific Northwest Cultural Region. They used resources such as fish, mainly salmon, for nutrition and large forests for trees to gather wood. They used this wood for houses and to build canoes and boats. So they were very water-based. They used rivers and they used the ocean a lot. Due to this abundance of resources, the native populations were very large. Tribes such as the Haida collected shellfish and hunted whales, seals, and sea otters. Okay, so mostly eating seafood for animals that relied on seafood. So other tribes carved totems that included symbols of ancestral spirits. Ancestral, don't forget, is one of your vocab words, to celebrate the natural resources around them. So what do we mean by that? Celebrating the natural resources around them. That means that all of the trees and all of the animals and all of the things that provide them nutrition and a way of living are things that they wanted to celebrate. Okay. So here is an illustration of where they were located. So if you're looking at a map of the United States, they were over here in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, and we're going to build on this map as we go today. The Desert Southwest Cultural Region. So the climate in the Southwest challenged Native Americans with a much drier climate than the Pacific Northwest. The Pacific Northwest is rather rainy, so there was an abundance of water. The Pueblo built settlements or large villages near the Rio Grande, and we will illustrate where that is in the next slide. The Hopi lived near cliffs, which they could defend from invaders. They collected rainwater in rock structures. They built structures to hold the water for their farms and lived in groups of houses called pueblos. Tribes throughout the region live in multi-story houses, that means more than one level, made of adobe. Adobe is a mixture of sand, clay, and water. It's similar to bricks, where, you know, if you're looking at a brick house, the one difference is that bricks are made to be small and then you build them. But adobe, they kind of build the structure with it and they just built it up. It's more like one piece or a couple of pieces that are put together. They farm maize or corn, beans, melon, squash from difficult soil. So imagine trying to farm in an area that is very, very dry. Okay, so that's why they trapped the rainwater and collected it and took it to where they were farming so they could irrigate. They called irrigate crops. So here is an illustration in the southern, western, southwestern part here. This is the Desert Southwest Cultural Region is about right here. If you'll see, oops, sorry, I got a little click happy there. So if you'll see, the Rocky Mountains tends to be a barrier. So while you're thinking about this, why would a ginormous mountain range be a barrier for people? Okay, think about that. Okay, so the Great Plains Cultural Region. Plains are flat grasslands extend from the Rocky Mountains to the Mississippi River, and I'll show you where that is in the map. The climate is hot and dry in the summer and cold and snowy in the winter. Tribes relied heavily on the buffalo herds that roamed the plains. So they would use every part of the buffalo. They would use the skin, they would use the meat, they would use the fat, they would use everything. Tribes such as the Pawnee planted corn, squash, and beans. Buffalo hunts involved the entire tribe traveling and living in portable houses called teepees, which were made of buffalo hide. So one of the misconceptions in popular culture in the United States is that all Native Americans lived in teepees. Most did not, just ones that were part of the Plains regions. Okay, so one of the problems that I always had with the way Native Americans have been portrayed, and as we move forward here, you're going to see that there was not one culture or one group of people, even though a lot of textbooks, especially when I was a kid, viewed all Native Americans as one culture. At the end of the slideshow, I will show you some things that are similar and some differences. Okay. So here's the Great Plains. So here's the Rocky Mountains. Right here is the Mississippi River. Here, like this. So the Great Plains are all in this area. Okay, Eastern Woodlands Cultural Region. Now, Pennsylvania happens to be part of one of these regions. Okay, so I made it a point to put one of the tribes that are around here on this slideshow. So Eastern Woodlands Cultural Region. So dense hardwood forest stretched from the Great Lakes. I had a bonus points for anybody who can see my typo. And the St. Lawrence River in the north to the Gulf of Mexico in the south. tribes such as the Creek, the Choctaw, Cayuga, and the Susquehannock. Susquehannock is placed between Lancaster and York counties, so right in here. Hunted and gathered plants and farmed corn, squash, and beans. The Iroquois Confederacy, a confederacy is an alliance, constituted the most important and powerful North American political alliance of several tribes in generations of tribal warfare. So Native Americans were often fighting over land, and they were fighting over resources and things like that. Because guess what? They weren't all one culture or one group. They were lots and lots and lots of them. Okay. The Iroquois lived in permanent settlements. That means that they found a place, they farmed it, they hunted and gathered in that particular area. So Eastern Woodlands takes up a good bit of space. Okay. And Susquehanna, right in this area in Pennsylvania. So this is the basic 4 cultural regions that we're going to talk about. So here's some common characteristics. Native Americans did not develop wheeled vehicles. They actually made wheels, but only for toys, interestingly enough. So they didn't have carts that horses would draw or would pull or anything like that with wheels. They did not develop water wheels, so they did not use water to create energy. They did not have a tradition of private property rights, so it was a community thing. So it was owned by the community, by the settlement, by the tribe. They domesticated maize, tomatoes, and potatoes. Domesticated is one of your vocab words. In this case, it is talking about plants. They constructed irrigation systems to make sure that their crops were watered. They built multifamily dwellings. That means that families live together, with extended families. So you have your the parents and the children, and then grandparents of one or both sides of the family living together, and sometimes cousins, and however many they could fit into the structure. And sometimes they couldn't, so they would build a bigger structure. They lived in cities that inhabited up to 100,000 people. That was mostly in Central and South America. They practiced the division of labor system based upon gender. Generally speaking, the men went to hunt, the women farmed. They used a nature-centered, which is based on their surroundings, spiritual tradition. So as we talk about the traditions that Native Americans used, you will see that everything that the land, the air, the water, the stars, all of those things impacted how they saw the world and how they saw how the world formed, in fact. They had a strong world tradition with a variety of creation myths. So you've already done some work on creation myths. In an oral tradition, it's a vocabulary word, but it essentially means that important information about your tribe, about the tribe's beginnings, about the world's beginnings, about the universe, are transferred from one generation to the next. They're passed down only using words, orally, speaking. This is important because Native Americans did not have a written form of communication. It was pictures, in caves. You can find pictures in caves, but they did not have a written form of language. So as a result, everything had to be passed down orally, through speaking, through stories. Okay? So please make sure that you are stopping at each one of these slides. Pause it. Make sure you're writing all of your notes down exactly the way I showed you. And after you're done with that, you take a picture of it and you share that picture with myself and Miss Mark. Okay, so good luck. If you have any problems, give us an email or come and see us on our Zoom meeting. All right? Have a good rest of your day.